Hey guys, this is Cyran and welcome to the 4th episode of my Let's Play where we challenge the 3rd gym. The rules are the same as before, but here's a refresher. I can only use Munchlax in battle, I can use other Pokemon for HMs, but I can't use any of them in battle. No items in battle except for held items, and I can also use items outside of battle, and finally, no glitches or exploits. Alright, enough dilly-dally, let's get on with the run. Well, first attempt goes horribly, but anyways, Berg sends out Swadloon, and we send out Davide. His Swadloon then goes for Razor Leaf for minimal damage, and then we follow up with Return, which doesn't one-shot because Swadloon is a bulky Anyways, Return hits and brings the Swadloon down to the yellow. And then his Swadloon decides to use Razor Leaf doing minimal damage, and Davide finishes it off with Chip Away. Next is Double, which can be a real piece of corn for any normal types and loves to spam Smackdown, as you can see, so I decide to use Lick, which barely does anything but paralyzes it, thankfully. Davide uses Chip Away, which somehow lands first for once, doing a little bit more damage, but not very much, and then the Dwebble uses Rock Polish, raising its stats. The Dwebble then uses Smackdown, which brings Davide down to the yellow, and Davide follows that up with a Return, which also brings the Dwebble down to the yellow. Davide's Quick Claw finally activates and gives us an opportunity to use Amnesia to stay bulky, and then the Dwebble immediately follows that up with another Smackdown. The Dwebble follows it up with another Smackdown, and we go for Return, knocking the Dwebble out. Finally is his ace Pokemon Leavanny, and we just get one shot by Razor Leaf. Let's try this again. Once again, Berg sends out Swadloon, and we send out Davide. And once again, the Swadloon goes for Razor Leaf, which does minimal damage, and we go for Return, which doesn't one-shot again, instead brings it down to the yellow. And then his Swadloon goes for another Razor Leaf, which does minimal damage as well, and then one more Return is enough to knock it out. Next comes out everyone's favorite roadblock, Dwebble, who obviously decides to spam Smackdown again. And then we go for Return, which does way less than I was hoping for. And then the Dwebble goes for Smackdown again, which brings us down to the yellow. And then Davide uses Return, bringing the Dwebble down to the yellow as well. And once again, the Dwebble uses Smackdown, and we go for Return, knocking the Dwebble out. Finally is his ace Pokemon Leavanny, which is in perfect range for its Razor Leaf to one-shot us. Third time's a charm, they say, so Berg sends out Swadloon, and we send out Davide. The Swadloon decides to use Razor Leaf, which lands a crit, but thankfully it doesn't knock us out, and we use Lick, hoping to paralyze, but don't paralyze and do very minimal damage. Berg's Swadloon decides to use Razor Leaf, which brings us down to half health, and we use Return, which brings the Swadloon down to the red. Berg decides to use a Hyper Potion, which fully heals the Swadloon, and we go for a Return, bringing it down to the yellow. The Swadloon goes for Razor Leaf again, bringing us down to the yellow, and Davide uses Return, knocking it out. Next up is Dwebble, who decides to use Smackdown as per usual, and we use Lick, which does minimal damage but thankfully paralyzes it. For some reason, Davide goes first and uses Chip Away for minimal damage, and then the Dwebble uses Rock Polish, raising its stats. Davide goes first again and uses Chip Away, which brings the Dwebble down to the red. And then the Dwebble uses Rock Smash, which also brings us down to the red, and Davide uses Chip Away, knocking the Dwebble out. Last up is his ace Pokemon Leavanny, which is a no-brainer and one-shots us with Cut. This is taking a lot longer than I expected. I'll probably need to grind since it's so hard for me to do it at this level, so anyways. We come back at level 30 and hope to have a better time, so the Swadloon uses Razor Leaf as per usual, which does minimal damage, and this time we decide to be strategic and use Work Up, which raises our stats, and then the Swadloon goes for another Razor Leaf. Then we use Work Up, and we raise our stats, and then the Swadloon goes for Razor Leaf again, and then we use Return, knocking the Swadloon out. Next is Dwebble, who obviously decides to spam Smackdown again, and we go for Return, which leaves the Dwebble on 1 health due to Sturdy, very annoying. Berg then uses a hyper potion which fully heals the Dwebble, but we decide to chip at its HP with Chip Away, which brings it down to the yellow. And then the Dwebble goes for another smackdown, which brings us down to around half health, and then we go for return, knocking it out. Last but not least is his ace Pokemon Leavanny, which uses Razor Leaf as per usual, but that activates our Oran Berry, healing us to the yellow. And then we go for return, which one-shots the Leavanny. Holy breakfast! Well, that was way harder than I expected. I'm probably going to be showing the 4th gym next, but anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.